Hi, welcome to Fund COVID's first funding salon. I'm Jan Young and I'll be your moderator. Quick shout out to Christy Connor, the Confident Connector, and Innovate Pasadena for donating the Zoom webinar to our event today. First, I'd like to introduce Hannah Lindstrom and James Eccles, who are project leads of Fund COVID. Then we'll introduce Allison and kick off today's event. Hannah and James, can you tell us a little bit about Fund COVID?
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Firstly, thank you all for coming. When we started Fund COVID, we had the simple goal to connect investors with COVID-19 projects. However, since we've started, we found that in the wake of the pandemic, connecting with an investor is about a lot more than just funding. It's about access to contacts in that investor's network, resources, guidance, simple mentorship.
We've also learned that because there is no clear path to connect with an investor, projects with viable solutions are left unable to scale them up. We don't have all the solutions just yet, but we do know that the best projects need to be highlighted.
And I can promise you that we are focusing 100% of our time and energy on solving this problem.
Yeah. So thanks again for being here, and we know you'll enjoy Allison's presentation.
And we'll see you again at the end.
Awesome. Thanks, Hannah and James. As I said, we will have some information about applications for Fund COVID at the end, so please be sure to stay tuned for that. And now on to Allison McGuire. I first met Allison when she presented at Innovate Pasadena for our Friday Coffee Meetup, and she's a powerhouse. And I knew I would want to introduce her to our Help with COVID and Fund COVID communities. Allison is a founder and creator of the McGuire Method. She's worked as a storytelling professional, from actor to politico to entrepreneur, for over 2 decades. As an entrepreneur, Allison founded and created 2 top-grossing apps, Walk and Sketch Factor. She raised over $1 million, authored 2 pedestrian navigation patents, and attracted a team from companies like Waze, Uber, and Snapchat. After winning every pitch competition in which she entered, including those of BMW and McDonald's, Allison realized her background as an actor gave her the skills to create compelling public presentations. With those learnings, she created the McGuire Method, a storytelling framework that combines acting techniques with business applications to give innovators, from C-suite executives to sales teams, the skills to present their best version of themselves. Allison, you ready?
I am ready.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us today. Take it away.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. I can't see your beautiful faces, but I trust they're beautiful. And hello to all of you. Let me just transfer over. Can you see my screen? Is everyone else muted? Still me. Okay. Jump in if you can't see my screen. Thank you all so much for having me. Thank you, Fund COVID. This is so meaningful and impactful for me. So I appreciate thinking of me and having me as a part of this journey. So I'm Allison McGuire. I am the founder of the McGuire Method and Pitch Like a Boss. I'm excited to teach you all how to take your ideas and your innovations and be able to present them with confidence as your best self. Jen has already done a great job of introducing me, so I don't need to do too much. But with regards to pitch competitions, I'll tell you this. So I grew up as an actor. I then moved into politics, which is kind of the same thing, and worked in national security and human rights legislation. And then I worked on pitching my companies. And as I was pitching in all of these competitions, I realized that while I did win all of them, yes, makes me look really great, but I had so many colleagues who were smarter than me, had better ideas than me, and I didn't understand why they didn't have the storytelling skills that I had. And then I realized it's because I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on acting training. So I thought, what if I taught that? And I taught the fundamentals of acting techniques, and I merged those with business applications. What would that look like? And that's at the nexus of what the McGuire Method is. So I'm excited to teach that to you today. Of course, it's going to be a show because I come from an acting background. First, we're going to go through how to present as your best self, then how to build a powerful story that drives impact, and finally, being able to create a story together. Storytelling 101, really simple, although sometimes the most simple things are the hardest to implement. So as innovators, people with big ideas, we love talking about how something works, this amazing new piece of information, this amazing new piece of data. Let me tell you, that's really, really important, but you don't want to start with how it works because it overwhelms your audience. The first thing you want to do with a pitch is get them curious to learn more. So first you want to focus on the problem, and I'll come back to the slide a couple times so you don't have to worry about screenshotting it, although you can. But the first thing you want to focus on is the problem that you're solving, your specific solution. That's a high level, not all of the details and getting into the weeds. And then what is the vision, the big picture vision, market opportunity for investors, for volunteers, for resources. And then and only then can you get into the how it works and the nitty-gritty of your competitive advantages. And that leads directly into why you and not anybody else. And then any points of traction that you have in the case that you're already launched. I'm going to show you a quick video of me pitching so you can have a sense of what the story is and how I put that framework to work in my own pitch. And then I'll go over how that worked and how you can do it for yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allison McGuire, the founder and CEO of Walk. And I have a confession for you. I'm a walking addict. You might not think so because of my shoes, but trust me, I am. I walk everywhere. You ever been walking someplace unfamiliar and suddenly your navigation app tells you to head north? Did you turn around and around doing what we call the smartphone pirouette? Or maybe like me, just start confidently walking in the wrong direction? Well, Walk, thanks. Walk eliminates these frustrating problems by giving you directions based on visual cues. Turn right at McDonald's, left at Starbucks, so that you can navigate with confidence and get to that lunch meeting on time. So how does it work? Our proprietary orientation technology exists nowhere else in the world that I'm aware of. We give you directions like you'd give a friend. Walk toward Macy's, for example, if you're in Union Square. And how do we make money? Two ways. One, advertising. Traditional advertising as we know it is dead. We've all had annoying banner ads pop up in our face. Well, we present advertising as a utility. We give brands the opportunity to convert foot traffic into sales. Turn right at McDonald's. Oh, and by the way, here's a free coffee. In fact, McDonald's paid us $49,000 to start developing this feature. Don't worry, we own the IP. The second way we make money is via a SaaS-based solution where we private label our technology and plug it into any other navigation app. Keeping in mind that if you take a boat, plane, train, or a car, you have to walk some segment of that journey. The past year has been a complete whirlwind. We have won a number of competitions in addition to Plug and Play, thank you, which have been McDonald's Innovation in Transportation Challenge, BMW's Future of Mobility Competition, and WeWork's Demo Day in New York, where we're based. So why us and why now? So not only am I obsessed with walking, but so is my team. We've done this before. We've created top grossing apps and designed navigation systems all over the world. My team is full of A players. Our art director, for example, worked on The Simpsons and Cartoon Network. Our head of business development headed business development at Waze. We're frequently called the Waze for walking. In addition, we've gained revenue, we've gained investment of nearly $1 million, launched our version 1.0 with those funds, gained intellectual property, just got an email that we officially trademarked the name Walk. And we've been mentioned in numerous media outlets across the globe. Why am I here today? Two things. One, I'm looking for cutting edge brands that are interested in emerging technologies that will convert foot traffic outside your store doors into sales. And two, I'm looking for savvy investors who are interested in joining our $1 million round, of which half of which is spoken for, that are interested in building the Waze for walking. Our version 2.0 is what we're building now. And that will give everybody in the room the ability to input information so that you can walk toward things you care about and away from things that you don't. the ways for walking. If you're interested, email me, shortest email of life, a@walk.me. Thank you.
Usually this is the part where I make you clap for me, but I can't hear or see any of you, so I'll just assume you're all clapping and cheering. But anyway, I wanted to show you how this worked and how you can use it to your advantage as well. First of all, I had a pre-intro. And what that is somebody went on stage before I even started speaking, which made me look really cool without me having to brag. So that, and I don't know if FunCovid can do this for you, and if not, somebody on your team being able to introduce you. But right before I went on stage, the guy said, Allison said, patented navigation, is an author of 2 patents in pedestrian navigation. And then I walk on the stage. And I usually don't get that as the first thing people think of me when they see me. So it gave me credibility before I even started speaking. The next part is that I didn't get it all right. Just like right now, I stuttered over my words, but I'm comfortable in my own skin, and everyone in the audience is rooting for you. So remembering to be a person, if something messes up, if technology doesn't work, it's okay to get it wrong as long as you feel comfortable in yourself. And I'll show you how to do that too. Next is timing. I'm very intentional about how much time I spend on certain sentences, on certain segments. And when you slow things down, it shows people that it's time to pay attention. The next is language. I do this for a living, but I write out every single word of my pitch. And then I think about the energy and the movement behind the words. For example, if I use a word like pepper, pepper is an upper. Naturally, the way that it rolls off your tongue, it's a way to get you excited and to get your audience excited. If you use a word like luxuriate, luxuriate is calming. You have to say it in a slower way. So you can't say luxuriate like pepper and vice versa. If you said luxuriate, that sounds like you have luxurious Tourette's, or pepper, which sounds like you've spent a little bit too much time at the bar before pitching. So being aware of the actual verbiage that you use is really important, and also keeping those words short and sweet. The reason is that it's more important for you, especially as innovators, to convey important concepts as opposed to explaining individual words. I'll say that one more time. It's more important for you to convey overall concepts than individual words trying to teach people industry jargon. You can go into the details later, but really keep it high level and make your audience feel smart. The last piece is an ask. If you don't have an ask, you don't have a pitch. Maybe you have a presentation, but I would argue it's not a compelling presentation. Give people something to do. Show them how they can help and what you need and how far it will get you. And FunCovid has more information and guidelines on how you can do that. All right, so how to present as your best self. First, we're gonna create a presentation persona. That's really fun. Then I'm gonna show you how to mesmerize and get a crowd excited. A crowd, I mean a Zoom call. Maybe you're just talking to yourself like I am in a room, but you'll get the people on the other end excited. And finally, how you can transform fear, or you can press the slides and you can go back like I accidentally did, and how you can transfer into excitement. First, building a presentation persona. So when I started working in national security and human rights and politics, and then I started pitching my startup, I was in rooms all the time with people who didn't look like me, didn't sound like me, and I felt like an imposter. So I thought, what if I created a character, a persona of myself, a version of myself that was more badass, more confident, a CEO, Allison. And I ended up creating her. I walked like her, I dressed like her, I talked like her. If you knew me personally, you know that I'm not just that person, but that helped me present as my best self and gave me a buffer so that if I did encounter rejection, which I have encountered a lot of rejection, it didn't hurt as much, but also I was able to feel like I could continue building on presenting as my best self. So how do you go about this yourself? First of all, start by thinking about fictional characters, in particular, fictional television characters. Now, the reason for that is that it will start to give you inspiration for building that persona. So maybe you resonate with someone like a Walter White. Now, you don't have to be cooking meth in your backyard or have to be involved in a drug ring. In fact, if you are, please don't tell me. But why is somebody like that curious and interesting to you? Is it because you like getting out of situations? Is it because you like creative problem solving? There are a number of reasons, but think about some characters that you get excited about and why you tune in week after week. Maybe you're a funny guy or gal. Maybe you're someone who's ruthless. You're someone from the cast of Billions, or more like someone from the cast of Queer Eye. Or perhaps you're like Dora the Explorer, who is so curious she showed up twice. Now, the purpose of this is not to think about this person needs to have my job, or they need to look like me or sound like me, or even have my own motivations, but thinking of these as a bigger picture helps you then distill down what are your unique characteristics that you want to build out. And I have all different types of presentation personas, like the motivator or the persuader or the diplomat. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go into those today, but there's certainly more details on my website, but start to think about what a heightened version of yourself, and especially focus on what makes you feel the most confident when you are presenting. Isms. Isms are super fun, and we don't know that we're doing them all the time. So isms are things that we say or do that are verbal tics or physical tics. Those can be like, you know, basically, evidently. In fact, my ism when I was working in politics was evidently, and I didn't know it. And a friend of mine pulled me aside. This is how you know she's a good friend. And she said, "Hey, Allison, you're using evidently in the middle of sentences and at the end of sentences a lot. And you think it makes you sound smarter, but actually it's having the opposite effect." So I said, well, evidently this is not working. If you do not know what your ism is, talk to your friends, talk to your family. I guarantee you they do. And the purpose of an ism, also, of understanding your ism, is not to get rid of it entirely. Saying or ah or like or basically is fine, but it's just to give more intentionality to when you speak and being more aware of when you pause. In order to mesmerize a crowd, first of all, you have to memorize your pitch. You have a very short pitch. Please, dear God, memorize it. I swear it'll be the most important thing. If you do nothing else, then memorize it. You can then engage with the audience more. You can feel yourself in your body, and you can get more excited to present. I promise you that it's worth it. The next is write down the FAQs. What are the things that people ask you all the time? And then write down your FFQs. Those are your frequently feared questions. So what are the questions you hope nobody will ask you, but guess what? Inevitably, someone will. Those are really important to write down, because if we don't prepare for them, we can come across as defensive and like we don't know what we're talking about. So it's really important to write those down and write down the answers. If you don't know the answer and somebody does ask you something, it's okay to say, I don't know, let me get back to you. Because if you make something up, you could be called out on it, or you might have to backtrack later, which is not a good look. Finally, slides. I can't tell you, I work with people, hundreds of people, all over, innovators like yourself, all over the world, and slides are a big killer. Slides should be a supplement to your presentation, not a crutch. So make sure that your slides are visual. I tell almost all my clients to take out all the text. You can, most of the text, definitely all the subtext, and subheaders. But remember that you can always send out a presentation that has more text and more information on it. But when you're presenting, it should have a little bit of information so that they can check it out and then move back to you. I'll show you some examples of that in a minute. All right, so other than memorizing, the other most important thing is believing in yourself. And this sounds really cheesy, and I totally understand that it sounds cheesy, but go with me here. The more you believe in yourself, the more the audience is going to believe in you. And the audience is on your side. They want to find the next best thing. Everyone wants this pandemic to be over. So they're hoping that you have the solution, even if they ask you hard questions. That's okay, but believing in yourself that you are going to be successful in one way or another is going to make the people in the room much more confident in you. All right, easier said than done. How do you break through and transform that fear, especially when presenting? First is just knowing how fear manifests itself. And it starts in our bodies. When we get nervous, we tend to get small. Especially as women, we're taught to take up the least amount of space as possible. Sometimes we pretzel our legs, or if you think about the fetal position, the smallest place that we can possibly be. So if you start to feel your chest collapse, just pull back your shoulders just a little bit and notice right now how you're sitting in your chair. And sit up a little bit taller. And I promise you, it'll start to open up your energy and make you feel more confident. The next is your voice. We tend to talk really fast, and then we tend to also have a higher register when we're nervous, but we try to pass it off like it's okay. If you just take your time, you naturally can't maintain that register. So just slow down and your voice will drop as well. Next, and most importantly, certainly, is our heads. We tell ourselves all sorts of stories of how we're going to screw up. We'll forget our lines. They won't like us. They'll think we're stupid. But the reality is the actual worst case scenario is that you die as a result of your presentation. I mean, in life, yes, but as a result of your presentation is you die, and you're going to get rejected, and you're going to bomb presentations. That's just a reality. I've bombed presentations, probably will do it again. Hopefully it's not this one. I have no sense of your reaction, but I'm hoping it's not this one. Who knows? But in your head, telling yourself positive stories is really important. Here's one really interesting fact. When we're told to calm down or relax, when we're feeling nervous, stressed, freaked out, think about the last time that happened to you. You were stressed, you were freaked out, you were nervous. Someone said, why don't you just calm down? Why don't you just relax? Did it make you immediately go like, oh my God, thank you. I really appreciate you telling me to calm down. All I needed was for one person to tell me to relax. And now I just, oh God, I feel so relaxed. No, it probably made you feel even more anxious and jump up and down and say, this is not a time to not freak out. I am totally freaked out. Okay, so anxiety, nervousness, stress, that's an energy frequency up here. Down here, that's calm, relaxed. If you're trying to go from here to here, you'll either meet somewhere in the middle or you'll ricochet between the two, either of which is very uncomfortable for your audience and of course yourself. So how do you fix that? You take that high frequency energy and you match it with an equal frequency energy. And that is excitement. So get yourself pumped up. Listen to music that makes you feel powerful. I listen to Sia's Unstoppable. Highly, highly recommend that. Makes me feel really strong. You can do jumping jacks. I have clients who go for runs. I don't know what your capacity is to go for a run around your neighborhood. Obviously, follow your guidelines of where you live, but be aware of getting in ways in your body so that you can match that energy and get yourself psyched up and excited to present. And again, believe in yourself. Really cheesy, but I promise you, it's really, really important. Okay, so now that you have all that formula down, you're feeling really confident, how do you actually build that story? Well, I'll show you. But first, I'm going to give you little pointers on some danger points to definitely avoid as you build out your story. First of all is over-reliance on numbers. So data is incredibly important, and obviously with this pandemic, we need data more than ever, and we're discovering a bunch of these things as we go. Fine. But if you overwhelm people with numbers, you tend to dilute your presentation. So figure out with the numbers that you're sharing, are they relevant? Are they timely? They're all probably timely. And can you tell the story in any other way other than using a number? I'm not saying don't tell your financials. I'm not saying anything like that, but being aware of how it's impacting and landing on the audience is more important than you just spouting out a bunch of information. You can always provide supplemental financials. Fund COVID will set you up for success when it comes to that. So don't worry about that. But also thinking, and for me, when I gave my pitch, I said we've raised nearly $1 million. And at the time, nobody would have thought, oh, she's probably raised $957,000. No, even though that was what I had raised. Now, I wasn't afraid to show my financials. I wasn't lying. I wasn't exaggerating from $1 to $1 million. But everybody in their heads were anchored around hearing $1 million as opposed to $957,000. Second is wildcard questions. Wildcard questions are direct questions to the audience where you do not know with 100% accuracy how someone is going to answer. Now, let me tell you this, unless you planted someone in the audience, you do not know with 100% confidence that someone's going to answer in the way you want them to, which can result in you trying to back out of the answer. So for example, when I would sometimes ask people, hey, have you, sir, been anywhere? Have you been somewhere unfamiliar and your navigation app said head north and you didn't know which way to go? And I had a couple times where guys have said no, and they're always guys, because guys apparently know directions and we don't. Anyway, I don't need to go into that, but with wildcard questions, it set me up to potentially then go back and say, well, you're a special flower, and then I looked pretty dumb. So don't open up the question. Either ask yourself rhetorically if you need to ask a question, or ask what I call an obvious no question, which is what Waze did. They said, who here likes traffic? And obviously nobody likes traffic, but if someone said, I like traffic, then the onus is on that person to justify their response, and it's not on you. And with all of that, you don't want to overload people with information. So you're going to stick to the script, you're going to keep it tight, and then allow room for questions, because at that point, that's where you can deliver the most value. All right, so back to the script. You're not going to start with how it works. In fact, you're going to start with what is the problem. Now, we all know what the problem is at a baseline, but be more specific about what your problem is that you're solving, and then a high level about the solution that you're providing. After that, go into the vision, the market opportunity. I'll show you how and why you, and how it works. What are the competitive advantages? And finally, that leads directly into why you and what traction you've had. All right, so with the first slide, when I presented for Plug and Play, the presentation that you saw via video, we used this slide as the intro slide. And that was a really great slide. Showed all these different places that you could walk. I added a little logo of Plug and Play. I'm just going to squeeze in there. I think you can add FunCOVID's logo in the bottom. It makes it look professional and like you're intentional with that particular presentation. We then pivoted and started creating slides, intro slides that were more visual, of representative of the experience I wanted people to have when they thought about my product. And then we had some traction, so we wanted to display that immediately in the beginning. All right, so that's the intro slide. And then going into the problem and the solution slides. For us, really simple. We showed a guy not knowing which direction to go, and people then were paying more attention to me than they were looking at the slide, because there's not much to read on that slide. Then we showed the product. Really simple. And by the way, the deck that I sent out to investors and partners had a bunch of text underneath the walk sign. So the walk logo. So it's okay when you send out a presentation that there's more information, but I wanted people to pay attention to me, which is why I kept this really simple. So once you've done that, then you're going to jump into the vision and the market opportunity. And this needs to be really big. So for us, it was imagine if you could walk anywhere in the world with confidence. So a lot of times these vision statements start with imagine a world where, and all of you are building an amazing world. So make sure to make your vision really big. And this is where it's time to take your time and get excited so that your audience can get excited too. Then I went into what's the market opportunity. So I showed brands that were in the audience how Walk was going to transform advertising and show it as a new feature. After that, when I gave presentations, I didn't have these in the slides when I gave that pitch, but when I gave investor presentations, I would show them our target market, what big world we lived within, and then who we were focused on for launch. So for you, saying you're focused on 7 billion people in the world is not as helpful as going specifically into who you're going to start by focusing on, okay? And then following that, you'll go into how it works, finally. And for us, that was going into the details about the technology, showing some visual cues and showing the screen by screen of how it worked. And then I gave some examples of how we worked with brands. I went into this SaaS-based solution slide. If I were to do it again, I would have deleted that slide because it wasn't as relevant for my audience, which were retailers. So keep in mind who your audience is. And then the market landscape. So for us, we didn't have a competitive advantage slide where we had different checks and or a chart. We had this. Now, this is probably not going to be applicable for you, but this is one way to display where you sit in the market and how you not necessarily are better, but at what point in the nexus you fit and how you can create a solution that's really unique. Now, really importantly, why you and what traction have you had? So for us, I talked about the competitions that we'd won, the experience that we had, and then I had one team slide before, but I wanted to show you this, which is what I presented later, which was me and my co-founder, just pictures of our faces. I know I look like a child in that picture, but wasn't a child. But anyway, it just showed, hey, we're friendly faces, and then I could talk about our experience. When I went to, however, our team slide, what I focused on was, hey, here's some logos of companies they've probably heard of, so that they don't need to know Ryan's actual name to hear, oh, the former CFO of Snapchat helped us pull together our financials or worked with us on finance. And that's something that people pay attention to. And then for our traction, I went into the revenue, the investment, our launch, and intellectual property that we had obtained. All right, once you've gotten to that, and only if you have time, and I know your pitches are short, but only if you have time, and you can have this in the Q&A if you want, if you have to, but you can add something I call sweeteners. Sweeteners are extra information, cool things about your company that you think people should know. Now for us, that was, I did a little cheeky, maybe you've heard of us, because that was on brand for us in terms of saying, maybe you've heard of us, because I'm fine being self-deprecating. But for that I wanted to show that people have already taken our app and they've gotten excited about it. I don't know what that's going to be for you, but keep in mind that you can only add those slides if they are relevant and if you have time. Okay, so now you have the script for how to build a story. And I know I'm running through all this really fast. Typically my workshops are a minimum of 4 hours, but I want to give you these foundations, this foundation, so that you can build out from that framework. And obviously I'm happy to answer any questions, but know that I'm blowing through this and there's a lot more, but come back always to that script and this framework, and you can build out any pitch or presentation from there. Okay, now let's create your story. Rallying the crowd. By crowd, I mean the people on the other end. You're not going to be in front of a stadium full of people. Maybe you never will in your life, or maybe you will. But right now, you certainly will not. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is it's really important not just to tell a great story and have a great script, but it's really important to take your audience on an emotional journey. Now, what I mean by that is an example. I was in a relationship with a guy, and we went to couples therapy, and it didn't work because we're not together, but I did gain a very interesting nugget, which is the therapist said, hey, so why don't you start by talking with each other and I can observe. So we talked, and I respected him and waited when he said something, etc. Back and forth. And she said, okay, stop. So you know how to talk to each other, but you don't know how to have a conversation. And I said, what? She said, conversation is where you're less concerned about what you have to say and more concerned about how it lands on your listener. So I'll say that one more time. Conversations are less about what you have to say or the message you want to tell, and more about how it's landing on your listener. Okay, so really helpful tip that I use now for the rest of my life. How are you going to apply that to your presentation? You're going to start an emotional journey in a place of anger. I don't mean piss your audience off. We're obviously all very fragile and vulnerable with this situation, but tap into those feelings when you're talking about the problem that you're solving. Then you want to move them out of this, you don't want to be in a rant, but you want to move them out of anger into a place of intrigue and curiosity. And I'll show you how this maps in a second. And then move them up to a place of inspiration where they're excited about the future and they want to be a part of yours. And finally, get them to a place of hope, really having a hope for a better tomorrow. This is a very dark time and you're doing something amazing. And I'm really excited to support you in how I can. Really make sure that your message is focused on giving your audience hope, not just you spewing out facts or information. So here's how it maps out to your script. To start, the problem. They're going to map that directly to anger, frustration, irritation. When you get to the solution, that's where you're going to move and shift into intrigue. Following that, with the vision and market opportunity, you want to inspire people and get them curious. Tell me more. That's the response you want to have from people. Then, when you go into the details of how it works, this should not just be where somebody's bored on the other end. You're here to tell them and sell them a story and get them excited about your product or your solution. So you got to engage them at this point. Then you can inspire them and continue to engage them when you're talking about yourself, why you, and the traction. And finally, how do you get them to hope? Well, you have to have an ask. Without an ask, you don't have a pitch. You just have a presentation. So when I went into my ask, and obviously my ask was very minimal compared to the stakes that you're working at, but my ask was, I'm looking for savvy investors and cutting edge brands. Now, psychologically, what I did there was I said savvy investors. There's no investor that's like, I'm not very smart. I prefer to be a non-savvy investor. No, everybody wants to be a savvy investor. Okay. And then the other was cutting edge brands. And there are no brands that are like, oh, we're not only old school, but we have no interest in emerging technologies or being cutting edge. Of course not. That's ridiculous. So I set them in that position of wanting to be involved and wanting to work with us by telling them the experience that they were going to have on their end. Now, defining a win. This is a really fun thing, and you should definitely have this as a part of your presentation mentally. A win is something that's slightly outside of your grasp, but is potentially possible in some world. My win was that I would go into an investor's office and the investor would say, oh, I love this. I'm so excited about this. Here's some money. Write me a check. And I would walk to the bank and cash it. Now, a little bit out of realm of possibility, but that was what a win would look like to me. And a win is something that makes you really excited, jump up, or however you display excitement. So what that looks like for me was I went into one day a meeting and there was a guy there and I pitched him for about 15 minutes. We had a conversation and then he said, well, this is great. Send me the paperwork and I'll wire you $50,000 on Monday. I was so shocked, but inside I was containing this excitement and enthusiasm, but I didn't show it because if I did and I hadn't planned for that win, I might have been like, wait, really? Wait, so fast? Are you sure? And then he might have said, well, am I sure? Is this a bad idea? And then we could have gone back and forth and it might have looked very bad for me and probably for everyone. So keeping in mind, what's something that you can set that's a really high bar that will get you excited because that opens up your energy to potentially even get that thing. And for me, the last slide that I had was a picture of our product and a little kitschy thanks that was on brand for us with Let's Walk and Talk. I just had my email address. I highly recommend not having your phone number. I mean, I'm a woman and I've had a stalker before, so I'm not interested in sharing my phone number publicly, but that aside, don't put your mailing address. Nobody's gonna write you a piece of mail. Just your email address, maybe your website. If your website isn't related to your email address, maybe change your email address. But anyway, just have a very easy way of getting in touch with you, and you don't need to have a bunch of text here. Okay, so back to the fundamentals of creating a compelling story. First, focus on you, really important. Make sure that you have a really great, strong presentation persona that makes you feel confident and excited. Second, get that content down. Keep it to the script and memorize it. And third, present. And by present, I mean rehearse, 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 and memorize. Now, what we do as actors is we have a whole way of memorizing, and I don't have time to get into that now, but make sure that you not only rehearse, but then you pad extra time so that if you run over, that you are still within the pitch time. So if your pitch is 3 minutes, and it's supposed to be 3 minutes, make sure that it's pared down to be 2.5 or maybe 2:45 so that you can insert some spaces maybe for pauses or places you forget or places where you think investors or companies or resources might be interested in learning more. All right, if you remember nothing from this presentation, and I hope you take away a lot, but if you remember nothing, please remember to memorize. It will make such a difference. It will make you look professional and polished and that much more likely to achieve the objectives that you're setting out. Second, and I know you can love my little animations here, really beautiful, is make it emotional. Focus more on how the audience is going to react to your story than information you want to tell them. Don't fire hose them with information. And lastly, most importantly, and most cheesy, but is really believing in yourself. Because audience, they're on your side. I want all of you to fix this problem. It's a huge problem. So believing that you're going to do it, much more likely that it will be successful. So that's a wrap. I'm going to just say a quick thank you again to FundCovid. I'm really bad about promoting myself, even though this is what I teach. So definitely check me out on Instagram. It's Allison M. McGuire with an MCG. And my website is themcguiremethod.com. I very much appreciate all of your time. We're going to do a little bit of an interactive coaching session, and we're going to do the coaching session with my guinea pigs who are FundCovid. So if we can bring you all back, Hannah.
Yes, we are back. We have returned.
Right.
That was awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, that was great.
Good. I'm glad you found it helpful.
Now I'm scared.
Don't be scared. So get so excited. All right. So for everyone who's watching, the purpose of this is to get them to a point where they feel good about their story, but to give them tools to improve their story and improve their own performance. Now, I'm a performance coach. I tell stories all day, every day. Sometimes I bore my friends with all my stories, and I could always be better. So it's not about being the best. It's about continually improving. And James and Hannah are already great. I've already heard the pitch, so I'm excited about it. So they're going to share it with you. You guys are going to be great. And I am here to help you improve, not to take you down. So take it away.
Okay. So we're just going to work on that introduction that we gave to FundCovid at the start of this presentation and use that to take on Allison's tips. So do you want us to just do it again and you can give?
Go for it.
Okay, here we go. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Firstly, thank you all for coming. When we started FundCovid, we had the simple goal of connecting investors with COVID-19 projects. However, since starting, we found that in the wake of the pandemic, connecting with an investor is about a lot more than just funding. It's about access to the contacts in that investor's network, resources, guidance, simple mentorship.
We've also learned that because there isn't a clear path to connect with investors, projects with viable solutions are left not being able to scale. We don't have all the answers just yet, but we do know that the best projects need to be highlighted.
Yes, and I can promise you that 100% of our time and energy is focused on solving this problem. So that's when we keyed in Allison.
Everyone, give them a hand. They can't hear you, but they're clapping for you, James. Just like I am over here. Cool. Great job. Okay, great job. So the first thing I wanted to mention that you did a good job of naturally is you articulated which section you were in. So when I talk about the problem, the solution, the vision, etc., as you all are going through building out your pitches, you can say, here's how it worked. Here's how it worked. You can also say, here's how it works, which is proper grammar. Anyway, but you can say, here's our vision. Here's the market opportunity. And what you said was you painted a really clear picture of what the vision was, which is great. I didn't mention how to tag team a presentation. And so you already did a good job of not speaking over each other, and you already had it scripted. So, and I love it, and you worked on it, so I'm very proud. But it is hard to tag team with someone else. So especially when you're pitching, making sure to write down their line, so that you go back and forth. That's really, really important because it's always harder to pitch with someone else than just controlling yourself, right?
And we tried a million different variations on that too. Who
That's
says
great.
fun?
Yeah, and that's the purpose really. And this is what actors do all the time is we say take risks, right? So what that means is play around with different ways of delivering. Oh, why don't you try that line? Oh, why don't you try it like this? Try it in a more curious way. Try it in a more, and so that's a really great way for you to play around with and not judge your performance, but really get into the process, right? And as actors, we say, trust the process, because a lot of times we'll be doing really weird things like rolling around on the floor. And we're like, where is this going to get me? But trust me, trust the process. It will end up for the best. So I really liked that you both had a friendly, approachable tone. And the way you opened it was really great. I told them before this is really like lean into who your presentation personas will be. And I will say you have separated yourselves to develop your own presentation personas within a very short amount of time very well, so that I can see the difference between you two, as opposed to just, hey, this is Hannah and James and they're together, and this is the presentation that they're giving together, right?
I wanted to ask, is there, like, if you were to try to get to the bottom of our presentation personas, or like give somebody even advice on how to do that, like where should we even start there? Is it based on like what's natural, or should you just pick like?
Yeah, it's a process, I will say, and it's definitely not something I can explain in a matter of minutes, but because I work like days with people and everyone says their first session with me is like going to therapy because I want to know you, but really doing a bit of a 360 review of asking your friends and family and I don't think this is in the survey or form that we sent out, but I am building a course where you can develop your presentation persona, but really looking at how does my world perceive me? Because you might not know how you're inspiring someone else. I don't just mean that you're inspiring someone, but like, what are the parts? You two are very different than me, and that's inspiring. We don't all have to present in the same way. So looking at your unique characteristics, being okay with only heightening some of them and not all of them. And I know, Jan, we're almost at time. And then looking at some fictional characters that inspire you, thinking about how they talk, walk, dress, and building in some of those pieces. The other thing I wanted to just quickly point out is I love the simple goal you framed from the beginning. This is a simple thing. And then that took me through a journey of it's simple. And then I liked we don't have all the answers, because you are acknowledging truth and you are acknowledging your own limitations in a really positive way. And I found that, and then when you went through the list, Hannah, you did a really good job of pausing throughout that list so that I could comprehend and follow that. So I would say it's really great. I would lean into your friendliness. You're both super friendly. And that's how I would start to build your presentation persona.
Okay, great. Well, great. Hopefully you'll see us get better through time.
I would have you do it again, but I don't know that we have time. I would have you do.
We don't, but actually the first question, and there's some really great questions. The first question is right along the same lines of the question that you had, Hannah. And that is, how can you be your authentic self and still create a persona? So would you say that that's pretty much your advice, is to try and build a persona off your authentic self?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something I get a lot. Now, a presentation persona is not to be fake. So I didn't feel, when I started building my presentation persona, I didn't feel confident. I didn't feel like a badass, but I wanted to, and I started leaning into that part of me, because there are parts of my personality that I felt confident about, until one day I woke up and I felt it. So your presentation persona should be parts of you, but not your entire self. Ideally, it's not a complete opposite version of you. I know people who build presentation personas. I grew up in Hollywood. I was an actor. Like, there's some people who you would meet and be like, really? They're like that? But ideally, that's not what you build. But it's really just a heightened version of your most authentic, excited, passionate self.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. And then let's see, the next question. When you don't have the answer to a question, how can you say, I don't know, let me get back to you, without seeming unprepared?
This is such a common question. And this is, I was just talking to a client this morning about it. This is so, so, so important. First of all, write down all of the questions that you're afraid people will ask, the FFQs, if you will, frequently feared questions. Secondly, practice answering them, and have somebody, even if it's a colleague via Zoom, have them ask you a question and take you off guard, and just practice saying, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll get back to you. As opposed to, well, the numbers, I mean, the last time I looked at it, I mean, I can look at, because it doesn't make you sound confident. If you say it and you just practice, I don't know the answer to that, I will get back to you. Just practice that phrase exactly, and what we call landing it as actors, which is putting a period at the end of that, not, I don't know the answer, like, don't ask the question back to the person. Make sure that you're landing that and really feeling grounded and confident in that. I know it's really hard, but it makes you look so much better than trying to BS your way through an answer.
That's part of being comfortable in your skin, from what you were talking about earlier. Okay. How can you get to the bottom of your presentation persona? Oh, well, I think we might have done that because this is a question from you, Hannah. So, so are we okay with moving on?
Do it.
Gotten to the bottom of your persona? I feel like, yeah. Okay. Now, this one I thought was really a great comment and question. Even though it's long, I'll read it out loud, because we've been talking to a lot of investors and finding similar reaction. So, when I began to respond to requests for innovative solutions to address SARS-CoV-2, I thought that human well-being was the priority. What I discovered was that it's business as usual. Investors continue to look for opportunities to maximize their monetary ROI. It seems they mostly measure the short-term opportunity to take advantage of the situation. In that light, my FFQ is, how will you make money? How could you present if you want to filter for investors where their measure is possibility of benefit to society over those who are just looking for one more financial advantage?
Jen, let me just ask you, was that last question part something that you just said, or was that part of the question?
No, that's all part of it's a long question. I tried to read it so that it...
No. Great job on reading it. Just wanted to be clear.
Yeah.
Because it flowed so nicely. So I would say it's, first of all, great that you're already aware of the type of person you want to work with. And this real sounds silly, but I believe in it, but like, trust your gut and trust your energy. When you get into the room or you start talking to somebody, I've been in a lot of situations where investors are just looking to get rich quick. Now, sometimes those people are really good people and sometimes they're not. And sometimes people who are saving the world are good people and sometimes they're not. I mean, there's a mixture, right? And I would also say that having investors who are driving you financially and investors who are driving you to make the world a better place, it's not bad to have a mix of those. I always am a fan of getting multiple perspectives at the table. That's my personal opinion. For you, that question, and for everybody who's listening, it is important that you know how to make money. If you are a company, I've made the mistake of being like, at some point we'll figure it out. You don't have that luxury. And what I would also say is, when you're talking about the vision and the market opportunity, pair the human lives, which obviously I would say is very important and the most important, with the financial opportunity. When you pair those things, you show that it's not one or the other, they're mixed. And that shows your value proposition, and that shows your values as a leader and as a company.
Do you also incorporate it as part of the ask, saying that you're looking for social impact investors?
If that's a way you think investors the investors you want to attract will already self-identify, okay, fine. But if you think that's a term that some people use that's not, that everybody doesn't either understand or use, then don't. Just trust your gut on when you talk to people individually.
Okay, awesome. Next one, any advice specific to virtual pitches?
I mean, I have so much advice. Like what do you want me to say? I would say make sure you're well lit. Like, I have so many people in the dark and you can only see like a little Cheshire cat smile. That's not easy to see you. Don't have a distraction. Don't have like a dog or a child coming running in if you can control it. If you can't, and your child jumps on your lap, then just say, my child's on my lap. Like, don't try and be robot, like, get out of here. And then I don't have a child, and just ignore that. Like, acknowledge it, because we're all in this very situation. The other thing is, if you memorize your pitch, you can look directly at the camera as opposed to just looking at your slides. And I mean, I have so many other pieces of advice. Keep your background really simple if you can. You don't want people to be paying attention to over here. You want them to be paying attention here. Like, check yourself out in the mirror before you go on. Maybe look if you have any spinach in your teeth. I mean, simple things, but I have a lot more. I just, I could talk for an hour about that at least, but and I'm actually running a course on how to present online, but anyway, I think that's
Okay,
that's
great.
all I have.
Can you give us some examples of how to present an ask that isn't related to funding? Like we need a contact in X industry, things like that.
How to present an ask. I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying I'm looking for this contact. I'm looking for this type of person. I mean, the more, and we've talked about this, Team Fund COVID, and I've talked about this, is the more direct you are and intentional with who you want to reach, the more you're going to resonate with the people who want to help. And a lot of times, like, I have a really big network and a lot of connections. And so people will say to me, oh, do you know somebody at this company? And I'll say, no, but let me see if I can find somebody who does. So you might not find somebody who has that connection, but if you're intentional and clear about that, don't kind of try and say something else to maybe get their attention. I don't know. But the more clear you are, the more clear it is for the person to identify themselves.
Kind of like when you were saying in your pitch, you were looking for savvy investors and cutting edge brands to partner with.
Yes.
Yeah. Brands weren't necessarily going to have
Yeah.
as investors.
And Jen, one thing, I mean, I said the investors were raising another $1 million, half of which is spoken for. But then I said looking for the cutting edge brands who are interested in emerging technologies and converting foot traffic outside your store doors into sales. So if you're looking for partner, volunteers, connections, just say, I'm looking for blah, which will do blah, and this is how this interacts with my company and what our relationship will be.
So that helps them envision how they're going to help you and helps them sort of step into that role.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. What if an investor or VC has an entirely different take? How do you gracefully stand your ground?
Spit out all my water. Look, the number of times I've gone into meetings and people have said they know more about my product, more times than I can count. The reality is you are the expert on your product. You might not know every single thing about the industry, and this is a world where nobody knows the answers. If you see something that says one thing about a fact and then another person says the exact opposite, it's a very confusing, topsy-turvy world. And what I do is I figure out what are the points that are most important for them to understand, and not necessarily that I'm right, and not necessarily that they're wrong, but that this is the reality. And sometimes I'll say things like, so the reality is, so if someone says something, the sky is green, and you say, well, that's a good point, but, and you shift into something else, they immediately hear, oh, I'm right, the sky is green. And as opposed to, the reality is the sky is blue, and you can deliver it in a way that you're not saying you're wrong, but the intonation of your tone is, the reality is, and you can do, I mean, this is my facial expression, but like, the reality, I mean, I'm exaggerating now, but you get the point. The other thing is I say, with all due respect, and then I shift into the point or what I think. If someone completely disagrees with your entire premise, they disagree with your business model, I would ask them, okay, well, if you were to be an investor in this, how would you look at revamping my business model? Or how would you look at working with my company? Because that puts them in the problem seat as opposed to just pointing out problems. And if somebody just wants to point out problems because they're not a nice person, that's fine. You're going to come across those people. But if you stand strong in your persona, it's not going to be it's not going to be as painful as it could be otherwise.
Got it. Great. And then our last question before we close up, how long do you think it should take someone to build the persona and deliver a killer pitch?
Ooh, another good question. That's so tricky. I mean, presentation personas, look, the more you know yourself, the easier it is to build a persona. So I know myself really well. I know what I'm not good at. I'm not good at a lot of things, and I know what I'm good at, and I'm good at a lot of things. And so I lean into those. If you don't know yourself, you don't know your strengths, and you don't know your weaknesses and are honest about those, you got to do that work, right? And so that's going to take you a little bit longer. And there's no judgment on that. I've been in therapy on and off for 15 years. So like no judgment there, but I'm not saying it's going to take you 15 years, but that could take a little bit longer to get that groundwork in. That said, again, I really just touched on this presentation persona stuff, and I usually spend at least an hour to 3 hours with clients, like going through understanding their motives and what they're after to start building that persona. And then with the pitches, I've worked with people and it's taken a day, and I've worked with people and it's taken months. And the thing is, once you have a pitch, awesome, but your pitch is going to change and morph and evolve, and your presentation persona is going to get stronger and stronger. So I use the gym analogy. You can't go to the gym one time and expect to have a six-pack, right? And the most elite athletes, the Olympians, aren't like, okay, I know how to run a mile really fast, I'm good. Like, they continue coaching to become increasingly better. So and not being like so afraid if every single thing isn't perfect, because I'll give one last example, and I know we're at time, but that I used to say, we give directions based on landmarks. And I was listening. I didn't say this in the presentation, but not everybody, but a lot of the responses I got were like, oh, turn right at the Empire State Building and left at the Statue of Liberty. And I'm like, it's a little hard to turn left at the Statue of Liberty, but I would say, no, it's more like a Chase Bank. And then people started saying visual cues. And I realized visual cues is a word I would never use ever, but that's what resonated with people. So it's really important when you pitch to listen to how people resonate with it, not just what you're saying, what you need them to know, or how you think they're going to understand it best.
Right. So sometimes it may not feel natural to say the phrase visual cues, but if that's what's resonating with your audience, you do want to pay attention to what your audience needs to hear in order to resonate back with you. So, all right, cool. Yeah. This has been amazing. If you want more information about Allison Monahan McGuire and the McGuire Method, be sure to go to our website, monahanmcguire.com. We will also be opening up our next cohort of applications on Friday, this coming Friday, May 22nd, and applications will be due a week later, May 29th. For more information about Fund COVID or our application process and other events, please go to fundcovid.org. And amazing. Thank you, everybody, for staying with us for this whole hour plus. Thank you to Allison. You were just fantastic. Thank you for kicking off our funding salon and all of that. And James and Hannah, our fearless project leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan, for hosting this.
Yes, thanks,
amazing. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. We will sign off now, and we really, really appreciate you hanging out with us today. Awesome.
Thanks again, Allison.
Thanks, Jan. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.